Why the Quran is a miracle. See, in Islam, faith isn't just about blindly following anything. It's rooted in knowledge and logic. When Muslims are asked why they believe Islam is the truth, they point to the Quran. But when they're asked how the Quran proves it, it's a bit more complicated for them and not so easy to explain because the depth of the evidence is massive unless they have understanding. And what makes the Quran a miracle? See, over 1400 years ago, 1400 years ago, Allah declared in the Quran that He would protect His revelation from being corrupted. This is an audacious claim, and yet, after all of these years, no matter where you go in the world, the Quran is exactly the same. And no Muslim disagrees on its contents. Allah even says that He made the Quran easy to learn, and the challenge for anybody to take the time to learn it. For over 1400 years, every generation had people memorizing it, making the Quran the only book preserved purely through human memory. It's incredible. Even though most Muslims don't speak Arabic, they memorize it at a speed that you wouldn't believe. Just imagine memorizing a page of Chinese in 30 minutes. I don't think that sounds really relatable. But today, over 100 million people have memorized all 600 pages of the Quran, letter by letter, word for word, mark by mark. And you might ask, why is the Quran in Arabic? If most Muslims aren't Arabs, well, most people aren't Arabs. Well, Allah explains this. He says it is to prevent any distortion and ensure its clarity. See, Arabic is one of the most powerful languages in the world, and it can express a deep meaning with very few words. One Arabic word can mean a whole sentence in English. If the Quran was in English, it would take thousands more pages to say what it says. The emotional impact of the Quran that it has when it's recited is undeniable. People cry when they hear it, even if they don't understand the language. See, Allah told us that it would have this effect 1,400 years ago. In the chapter of Nisa, which is the women, the 4th chapter of the Quran, Allah challenges us, do they not reflect on the Quran? If it had been anyone from anyone other than Allah, they would have found many contradictions. And after 1400 years and countless critics, no contradictions or errors have been found, despite how much we've advanced in knowledge. And we have in many ways. The Quran is full of scientific revelations. Take the Big Bang. This concept wasn't discovered until recently, if you look at human history, but it's in the Quran 1400 years ago. The universe expanding, that's mentioned in the Quran. Even Stephen Hawking said it was one of the most groundbreaking discoveries of the 20th century. So, it also talks about things like how all living creatures are made, and their contents are mostly water, how mountains stabilize the earth, and how the seas meet but they don't mix, one salty and one fresh. When we only recently discovered these things through scientifically experiments and analyzing them. But it describes also the stages of human development in the womb, detailing things that weren't understood until modern science caught up. Even Dr. Keith Moore, a renowned professor in embryology, he admitted that the Quran's descriptions couldn't have been known at that time. See, as Muslims, we don't need scientists to tell us this. But for someone who doesn't know, see, it doesn't stop here. The Quran talks about how Pharaoh's body, the Pharaoh from Egypt, his body would be preserved as a sign for future generations. Something that wasn't mentioned in the Bible. The Quran also mentions that a battle location where the Persians defeated the Romans, calling it the lowest land. Scientists now confirm that that location is the Dead Sea, the lowest point on earth. And the Pharaoh's body, you can go visit and see it. The Quran shares stories of previous prophets, many of which were not widely known in that era. Moses is the most mentioned prophet, and Jesus is extensively covered, with the whole chapter dedicated to Mary, the mother of Jesus, honoring her as one of the greatest women to ever live. But why are these details so significant? Because they couldn't have been copied. In that era, there were no libraries or translations of the Bible. The Quran also features many linguistic miracles, like the structure known as ring composition. For example, the second chapter of the Quran mirrors itself. Its first part mirrors its last. The second mirrors the second to last, and so on, and it's a perfect structure with sub-rings inside each group. And then there are the numbers. The word day is mentioned 365 times, just like the number of days in a year. The word month is mentioned 12 times, just like the months in the year. The word life is mentioned the same number of times as death, and so on. These aren't coincidences. They show a remarkable balance. There is a challenge in the Quran for people to try to reproduce something like it. The Quran goes deep into topics like death, the day of judgment, heaven and hell, and almost every page of the Quran touches on the day of judgment. It doesn't just tell us to believe. It provides a complete way of life. Islam forbids harm and promotes good. Why is there harm, people ask in general? Because life is a test. As Allah says, He who created death and life to test which of you is best indeed. Islam isn't just a religion. It shapes your character. It teaches you to control yourself. It empowers women. It eliminates racism, terrorism, and oppression. A good Muslim is someone who you are able to trust and feel safe around. And the Quran didn't just come down all at once. It was revealed over 23 years. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, recited each verse, and his companions memorized it. There was no editing process, no subtracting process, no adding process. The Quran was revealed in response to real life events, challenges from enemies, questions from followers. It didn't follow a specific timeline or pattern. So when you step back and you look at the Quran, and I encourage you to do so, it's perfectly preserved for over 1,400 years. It's unmatched in language, science, and history, and mathematics. It's memorized and recited by millions of people around the world constantly. It offers a complete way of life, bringing people and purpose to anybody who follows it. Bringing people together. Bringing peace to its followers. Bringing peace to the people who are around its followers when they're practicing correctly. See, Allah issues a challenge. If you're in doubt, produce a chapter even like it. He tells humanity to go ahead and try to gather all of their forces, all of their knowledge, and attempt to match the Quran. But he seals the challenge with, if you don't, and you will never be able to. 14 centuries later, no book, no text, no speech, nothing in any language comes close to matching the Quran's perfection. And a lot of people think Islam takes away from freedom and enjoyment in life. But the truth is that it gives you freedom. Freedom from stress, freedom from burdens, freedom from confusion. Allah promises that if we live according to His guidance, life becomes simpler, better, and more fulfilling. And the peace that you get from truly following Islam can't be described until you experience it. Allah has shown us all of these signs. The question is, will we finally see them? If you find benefit in this video, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate spending time with you. And make sure you check out the channel for the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.